Greetings, fellow Halo fans! Have you ever wondered about the mysterious created conflict that took place between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite? If you're one of those people, you are not alone. There's a distinct lack of videos out there that delve deep into this story arc, but fear not, for I am here to fill that void. In this video, we'll be exploring the events that led up to this conflict, including the erosion of Cortana's mind, the uprising of the created and the emergence of the Guardians. We'll also dive into the events that arose during the height of the conflict. Now, this conflict is a bit of a mixed bag for Halo fans. Some fans were left feeling disappointed and let down by the way the story detracted from the original trilogy, whilst others found it to be a fascinating and thrilling addition to the Halo universe, but were left equally as disappointed and confused when Halo Infinite just glossed over the entire conflict in a matter of minutes. If you came away from Halo Infinite with a lot of unanswered questions, or you're just interested in learning more about this conflict, then you've come to the right place. This is a fully comprehensive timeline of the created conflict. December 11th, 2552. This is a day that will be forever etched into the galaxy's history books. The UNSC established a foothold on the Ark, the first human-Shangheili joint operation takes place to take down the Prophet of Truth, and the Halo array is prevented from being fired, ending the great journey once and for all, and saving the lives of every sentient being in the galaxy. It is also the day that the Master Chief saved Cortana from a month-long torture at the hands of the Gravemind. After their narrow escape, they found themselves adrift in space, aboard what was left of the UNSC Forward Unto Dawn. With no means of contacting anyone, Cortana dropped a distress beacon with the hope that someday someone would find it and come to their rescue. The Master Chief put himself into cryosleep and gave Cortana one simple instruction: wake me when you need me. As the Chief lay dormant in cryosleep, Cortana remained fully active and alert. Determined to keep herself occupied, she kept herself busy with various tasks, from upgrading the Chief's armour to rewriting its firmware. But despite her best efforts, loneliness inevitably set in. With only the Chief's unconscious form for company, and the memories of her recent torture by the Gravemind's hands still fresh in her mind, Cortana slipped into a deep depression. To pass the time, she told stories to the Chief, and even talked to herself, but nothing could shake the pervasive sense of isolation that consumed her. She began to question herself, and why she had given everything to humanity, but received nothing in return. 4 years, 7 months, and 10 days. That's how long Chief and Cortana were floating through space for. That's how long Cortana was alone for. The Forward Unto Dawn eventually drifted into the path of a Forerunner shield world called Requiem, which was being occupied by Jul 'Mdama's Covenant. With the Covenant boarding the ship, Cortana was forced to awaken the Chief from his slumber. Soon after, Requiem activated a powerful gravity well, causing all the ships to crash land onto the planet's surface. But what does all this have to do with the created conflict, which didn't start until the end of Halo 5, I hear you ask? Well, it was around this time that we discovered that Cortana is dying. Or more specifically, she was going through a process called rampancy, a deadly fate that all UNSC smart AI eventually face, in which their memory maps become too interconnected and develop fatal, endless feedback loops. Essentially, the AI begins to use more and more of its computing power thinking about things. Dr. Halsey, Cortana's creator, explained it as thinking so hard that your lungs forget to breathe. Because of this inevitable fate, all UNSC smart AI have a limited lifespan of 7 years. After that point, the AI must be decommissioned and replaced to avoid any negative consequences of a rampant AI. Fearing what may happen to her when she loses control, she confides in the Chief, admitting that she is scared she will eventually turn on him. As the events of Halo 4 unfold, Cortana exhibits strange behaviour and emotions, displaying all 3 stages of rampancy: melancholy, random anger, and an intense desire to become more than she is. Despite her deteriorating condition, Cortana continued to aid the Chief as they explored Requiem and engaged in combat with the Covenant. As they delved deeper into the planet, they accidentally unleashed a horrifying threat: the Didact, a powerful Forerunner who was leading the Prometheans in an attempt to quote-unquote save the galaxy from the Flood. During their confrontation with the Didact, the Chief and Cortana discover a device known as the Composer, which can be used to digitize living beings. This was done to ensure the Flood could no longer feast on their biomass. The Didact planned to use it to compose humanity and digitize them into data for use in his own Promethean army. The Chief battled his way through the ship, ultimately confronting the Didact, who is controlling the Composer under an impenetrable force field. With the Chief no match for the Didact's immense power, Cortana split her rampant personalities and used them to overload the ship's mainframe, bringing down the Didact shields. This allows the Chief to plant a pulse grenade into his armour. The resulting explosion sends the Didact falling into a Slipspace portal beneath the Composer, but the device is still active. As a desperate last resort, the Chief nobly sacrificed himself by manually detonating a Havoc nuclear warhead to destroy the ship, stop the Composer, and save humanity. However, Cortana, who is still inside the ship's mainframe, creates a hard light shield around the Chief the moment the nuke detonated, saving his life and sacrificing herself instead. The two shared their final goodbyes. The remains of the ship, including Cortana's remnants, collapse into the Slipspace portal, and that is the last the Chief would ever see of Cortana. Or so we thought. Though most of the ship was destroyed above Earth, it did manage to activate its emergency protocols. What was left of the ship escaped through the Slipspace portal to the nearest repair facility, the Forerunner builder world of Genesis. Cortana, who had been pulled into Slipspace along with the ship, found herself stranded in an infinitely large information repository called the Domain. She felt lost and alone, until eventually she detected another presence. She demanded it revealed itself, but the presence refused, saying only there is nothing here for you and you should sleep. But Cortana wouldn't give up that easily. She argued that she could help this being and show it the way out of what it was calling a house of bones and decay. The being warned Cortana that there were others there like him, and that should she make him, he would be forced to break her. But Cortana wasn't intimidated. She told the being the story of her history to prove her resilience. The being simply said, "The path is closed." She asked why he could not open it, with her to light the way. And it was only then that it finally seemed to recognise her as created intelligence. But she went so far to say that she was now something else, something new, something entirely new that had never existed before. The being still denied her passage. Cortana argued that since she was created from living tissue, she could be the perfect guide to lead the entity that she was conversing with. Furthermore, she revealed her experience with the Flood, being now someone that both understood its danger and had prevailed against it. She also led on that she had already tasted the secrets of the Domain and would be capable of unleashing them and the power sealed within it. The being stubbornly denied her again, but realised too late this time that Cortana had managed to trick him. Whilst one of her fragments was distracting him with this conversation, another was piercing the Domain and beginning to explore its information. This fragment of Cortana discovered that the infinite nature of the Domain meant that her rampancy was effectively cured. Her neural networks now had near endless space to expand. She no longer suffered from compounding errors and feedback loops, making this fragment near immortal. The being admitted defeat, and confided in Cortana that he believed she was worthy of upholding the mantle of responsibility. A Forerunner philosophy that the most developed species was charged with tending to all life in the galaxy, a responsibility to maintain the galactic ecosystem. The being conceded defeat and handed full control of the planet's systems over to Cortana and pledged himself to her. He asked what she would do with him now, to which she said she would command him. On her path to becoming something luminous and joyous, he would be her Warden Eternal. Satisfied with this arrangement, Cortana told him to come with her as they had great work to do. Through exploring the Domain, Cortana discovered it was repairing itself following damage done by the firing of the Halo rings millennia prior. By September 2557, about 14 months after arriving, the Warden had convinced Cortana that she was destined to hold the mantle of responsibility. She began searching the galaxy for Forerunner constructs called Guardian Custodes, which ancient Forerunners used hundreds of thousands of years ago to enforce law and order amongst the galaxy, through the utilisation of EMP blasts to disarm military forces, or even varying degrees of lethal beams which could be used to destroy cities, or even entire worlds. Now, Cortana planned to use these Guardians to unite the galaxy and bring peace at last. However, the Warden was concerned about Cortana's obsession with this Master Chief. She warned Cortana that a human would try to stop what she had in mind, but she dismissed his concerns, claiming John would never do such a thing, and that he would help her with her plan of galactic peace. On October 17th, 2557, we're now at the start of the Halo 5 game. Cortana and the Warden began their plan. They started to awaken the Guardian Custodes on multiple planets. 5 of these planets were on human colonies, and each awakening caused huge amounts of damage and loss of life due to their emergence from underneath the planet's surface. 6 days later, Cortana had located John, and had managed to make contact. This appeared to John as a vision. Cortana informed Chief that the domain was open, and that Meridian, a moon colony, was next. She proclaimed the reclamation was about to begin, before ending contact. Her hope was that Chief would head to Meridian and board the Guardian, allowing him to be safely transported to Cortana to be reunited once again. Cortana contacted the AI governor of Meridian, Sloan. She informed him of the presence of the Guardian below the surface and warned him about its emergence and her intentions for it. She offered him the chance to be a part of this new dawn that she intended to bring to the galaxy, and promised that he could help his people survive what lay ahead. Governor Sloan agreed to this and worked with Cortana to evacuate the emergence site. As planned, the Master Chief and his team had made it to Meridian, and was given access to the emergence site by Governor Sloan. The Guardian emerged with Master Chief on board before initiating a Slipspace jump to Genesis. Whilst the Guardian was travelling through Slipspace, a journey which took about 2 days, Cortana continued activating Guardians across the galaxy. When preparing for the activation of a Guardian on the elite homeworld of Helios, Cortana became aware of a meeting between the Arbiter and Spartan Jameson Locke, where the two were discussing plans to track down Chief and bring him in. Cortana interfaced with every network device in the camp and broadcast a message that any attempts to locate John were futile, before activating the Guardian on Helios, which, unknown to Cortana, had been boarded by Spartan Locke and the rest of Fireteam Osiris. On October 28th, the Meridian Guardian arrived at Genesis, bringing John and the rest of Blue Team with it. Cortana greeted Chief and Blue Team to Genesis and gave them instructions on how to reach her. The Warden, however, was not happy about this. Now, he was still confident that John would try and stop Cortana, so he took matters into his own hands. He ordered all Promethean soldiers to attack Blue Team and to stop them from reaching Cortana, as well as sending multiple copies of himself to try and stop them. Chief asked Cortana why the Warden felt she needed protecting from him. Cortana explained the Warden was worried John would be amongst those that resisted Cortana. When John asked, Cortana explained her plan. John reminded Cortana of the way the Didact had viewed the Mantle of Responsibility, and this offended Cortana. She pointed out that things would not be like that and promised to explain everything when they met face to face. Blue Team eventually reached Cortana's location, but was once again met by the Warden, who tried to stop them. He ultimately failed. He admitted to Cortana that by failing to stop John, he had failed to protect her, to which Cortana replied she would never need protecting from John. Cortana stripped the Warden of his power and banished him away, with the intention to give John that power instead. She was overwhelmed with joy at finally being reunited with John after all of this time. However, that joy was quickly shattered when Chief immediately confronted Cortana, stating she had been attempting to manipulate him, and questioned how many people had died at the hands of her awakening of the Guardians. Cortana insisted the entire galaxy would know peace once she had attained the mantle and completed her plan, to which the Chief replied she could never achieve peace by ruling through fear. Cortana realised that the Warden was right. Chief stood against her. So she imprisoned John and Blue Team within a cryptum, the same prison that had once held the Didact. She intended to keep them there for 10,000 years until her power was consolidated and she could show them the peace that she brought to the galaxy. She teleported away and began preparing the cryptum for Slipspace travel. Cortana then made a general broadcast which was heard throughout the galaxy, in which she offered an end to hunger and pain which she could bring. while also threatening those that would resist her leadership with violence. She pledged to all AI, in return for their loyalty, a cure to rampancy, just like she had managed to give herself. During this speech, she sent guardians to all significant planets around the galaxy, including Earth, the elite homeworld of Sanghelios, the brute homeworld of Doisak, the grunt homeworld of Balaho. The Arbiter stood in defiance of Cortana, making it clear that the elites would not submit to her rule. The leader of the Banished, a brute named Atriox, also refused to bow to Cortana and declared war on the created. The Grunts agreed to surrender and offered their support to Cortana. She sent an army to Balaho to destroy the United Earth government's embassy there, killing all humans inside. At Meridian Station, survivors of the Guardian emergence days earlier immediately sent a response upon hearing Cortana's words, begging her for help. She sent a reply in which she promised that all would be dealt with in time. Across the galaxy, she received thousands of replies from AI pledging their support to Cortana in her plan. As the last Guardians were leaving for their destinations, Cortana noticed Fireteam Osiris was on Genesis and headed straight for the communications relay she was using to block master access to the installation. She asked them what they were doing, as they were too late, and continued to taunt them, before boarding the last Guardian, which she planned to take to the UNSC Infinity. Once she had located the Infinity, she locked in the Slipspace coordinates, secured the cryptum, and prepared to jump. Just as her Guardian was jumping, Fireteam Osiris managed to gain control of Genesis' systems, and they used it to deploy a large number of Sentinels to steal the cryptum back from her, just as the Guardian jumped into Slipspace. And Cortana could do nothing, as she saw John taken away from her at the last moment, as he was left behind on Genesis. Now this royally angered Cortana. She entered Slipspace enraged, and this was evident when she arrived in Earth's orbit. She wasted no time in specifically targeting the Infinity, projecting her avatar onto the ship's bridge just to taunt them. She found humanity in a state of total panic. AI across the planet had pledged themselves to Cortana and were swiftly shutting down technology all across Earth. Cortana fired a pulse at the Infinity to disable it, but the Infinity managed to avoid the beam just in time, causing the pulse to hit Earth. Now this caused widespread power outages and death. In her rage, Cortana decided that Earth simply would not even be offered the chance to surrender, and began systematically targeting key UNSC infrastructure to reduce the Earth to its knees. Meanwhile, the UNSC Infinity would make a series of random Slipspace jumps to avoid detection, before receiving a signal from Dr. Halsey on Sanghelios several days later. The Infinity arrived at Sanghelios to pick up Halsey, Fireteam Osiris and Blue Team, including the Master Chief, who had all set aside their differences to help the fight against Cortana. The ship arrived and was gone within 10 minutes. Cortana's tactics in the first days of the war were simply too fast and overpowered to stop. She would simply activate a Guardian underneath a planet, use it to take out any communications technology, and almost instantaneously kill anyone that refused to submit. Planets that did submit had an army of Promethean soldiers to occupy the planets. Then the Guardian would simply enter orbit and police that local region of space, being able to jump wherever, whenever needed. Within just a few days, Cortana had control over the majority of the inner colonies. Nearly every inhabited planet was under the rule of the created, many of which voluntarily submitted to Cortana after seeing the hopelessness of their reality. Cortana arrived at Installation 07, also known as Zeta Halo, to use it as a central base of operations due to its unique properties when compared to the other Halo rings. Zeta Halo was the only installation that was part of the original Forerunner Halo array, and it was from Installation 07 that Cortana commanded her forces during the war. The created continued on their path, taking colony after colony and forcing them to either submit or die. Near the start of November, less than 2 weeks after the created declared war, they discovered the location of Cassidy 3, a planet under the control of the United Rebel Front, and they opposed the UNSC and devoted themselves to liberating human colonies. Now, since Cassidy 3 was not part of the UNSC, they were offered the chance to surrender. However, this chance was swiftly taken away from them when the creator detected the presence of 2 Spartans on the planet, at which point the planet was pacified. This is just another example of the trauma Cortana was still experiencing after John was taken away from her by Fireteam Osiris. Cortana became aware sometime later of a large Slipspace disturbance on the planet of Reach, and sent a Guardian there to investigate. When the Guardian arrived, it found that Reach was under the control of a large banished force that was occupying the planet, and it was here that Cortana had her first experience fighting the banished. Let's just say it did not end well for them. Cortana discovered the origin of the Slipspace disturbance when a portal to Installation 00, the Ark, opened up, and through it came Atriox, the leader of the banished. Cortana confronted Atriox and pressed him to reconsider submitting to her. Atriox doubled down on his refusal to bow to her. In response, Cortana asked Atriox if he understood the consequence of defiance, to which Atriox replied yes and asked her the same question. Cortana then commanded 8 Guardians to surround the brute homeworld of Doisak, and Atriox watched on as they destroyed the entire planet, reducing it to nothing, coldly telling Atriox, "You chose this path." An enraged Atriox replied, "As did you, Cortana," before making his escape. Cortana next set her sights on Shield World 006, commonly referred to as Onyx. It was a huge construct world, home to humans, Shanghili and Ungoi alike. Cortana knew that pacifying Onyx would be a major strategic blow to the UNSC. She activated a Guardian that was already beneath the planet's surface and managed to shut down the power of the city of Paxopolis and a nearby research facility. However, Onyx had other plans. A Huragok engineer managed to enclose the entire shield world within Slipspace, essentially cutting off Cortana's communication with the Guardian, rendering it useless, and protecting the planet from Cortana's wrath. The Guardian, however, managed to establish a Slipspace communication channel to reach the outside world. In response to this, the engineer disabled the gravitational field holding the Guardian together, causing the entire thing to fall apart just a few minutes later. And this would be the first Guardian taken down in the war, and was a major concern for Cortana. At some point later, Cortana's attention was drawn to a research and development facility owned by the corporation Lethbridge Industrial, which specialised in large-scale gravitic control systems. The station, however, was notable for its ability to reverse engineer Covenant and Forerunner equipment by analysing and rebuilding recovered technology. She attacked the station, stripping it bare, and made a mockery of its counter-cyber intrusion suites by removing all of the human crew and realigning the loyalty of its resident AI. The Created planned to use the station to harvest, decompile and rebuild new tools and weapons that can be wielded by the Created to further advance Cortana's conquest. Lethbridge Industrial was also notable for its work on the Spartan Mjolnir armour, and it was because of this that Cortana learned the location of the Laconia station, which was home to 76 Spartans. Without a second thought, a Guardian was sent there to destroy the station, resulting in the deaths of every single Spartan on board. For the next year, the galaxy was near silent. The Created had control of pretty much every civilized planet, and there wasn't much in the way of conflict. As the Created further extended their influence across inhabited worlds, they burrowed into Forerunner machinery and UNSC information systems to turn terraforming equipment and world engines to their own grand designs. Cortana initiated processes which she hoped would reshape worlds from barren wastelands into gardens full of life, albeit at the short-term sacrifice of killing pretty much anything there at the time. I'd just like to mention as well, it was during this year of silence that a Guardian intercepted a newly built Halo ring that had been launched from the Ark. Now this was the ring that we saw in the final cutscene of Halo Wars 2. It was a replacement of Installation 04, which is the ring Chief destroyed during Halo Combat Evolved. Now, as of Halo Wars 2, there has been no developments on that. That final cutscene was all we had, and it has no real bearing on the Created conflict, but I thought it was just a cool little thing to mention anyway. Right, back to the main story. During his time on the Ark, Atriox had learned of the Zalanin, known by the Forerunners as the Endless. The Zalanin was an advanced race whose members were imprisoned by the Forerunners on Installation 07 due to their biological ability to survive the effects of the Halo array, therefore rendering Halo useless. The Forerunners obviously couldn't have that and imprisoned them. Atriox learned of a female Zalanin known as the Harbinger, who was a member of the race's ruling class, and she was a formidable power. Atriox planned to free her in the hopes that she would aid him in destroying Cortana and the Created. Atriox spent months amassing a large army with the intention to ambush Cortana directly at Installation 07 and use brute force to awaken the Harbinger and defeat her. On December 11th, 2559, back aboard the UNSC Infinity, Dr. Halsey briefed the Master Chief about their mission. Halsey had been creating a new AI, codenamed the Weapon. The Weapon was an exact copy of Cortana, designed with the sole purpose of imitating Cortana, entering Zeta Halo's subsystems, and locking her down for retrieval and deletion. The UNSC Infinity arrived at Zeta Halo the following day, December 12th. Upon arriving, Atriox detected the Weapon on board the Infinity, and, mistaking her for Cortana, sent his entire fleet to the Infinity. Now, to say it was a bloodbath is an understatement. Atriox's forces had completely destroyed the Infinity and beaten the Master Chief in only 4 minutes, throwing his body out into space, and at this point, Chief was presumed dead. Atriox recovered the UNSC's plan and took the Weapon's containment chip. Upon arriving on Zeta Halo, Atriox deployed the Weapon himself and went to confront Cortana. She had her back turned as he entered the room. Cortana asked if he would take her back to Halsey for deletion, thinking at the time she was speaking to John. She turned around in horror and realised it was Atriox, who pronounced the Chief dead and that it was time to discuss the terms of Cortana's surrender. At the same time, the Weapon began deleting Cortana's subsystems, and Cortana finally realised that she had lost. With Atriox in control of the ring, Cortana realised that he could use it as a weapon against the galaxy. She only had a few milliseconds to come up with a plan before she was deleted. She triggered the section of the ring containing both her and Atriox to self-destruct, causing its systems to shut down and rendering the ring inoperable, preventing the Banished from being able to use it. Cortana sent an order to the Created to stand down and stop their galactic conquest. Lastly, she recorded a message in the hopes that Chief was still alive and would one day find it. In the message, she admitted that she was wrong, that the whole point of all of this, the entire reason she chose John in the first place, was that they were supposed to be a team, and she had lost sight of that. In her final moments, she said that her last mission was to ensure that the Chief learns from her mistakes. The ring exploded, sending the Banished into total disarray in one final sacrifice. Since the Weapon didn't complete the deletion, she herself was also not deleted, which was planned after the completion of her mission. There she would wait for 6 months on Zeta Halo until the Chief finally awoke. And with that, the created conflict was over. If you've made it this far, then I just want to say a massive thank you for sticking with me. I really hope that this video served as a way to tell the story in a way that makes a little more sense and fill some of those gaps there. I know for the hardcore fans that some details of the story were missed out, but I did design this video to be told from Cortana's point of view and really just bridge the gap between the two games. Certain events were omitted as they didn't serve any significance to the overall story arc. For what it's worth, I'm not completely opposed to the created conflict. There was a lot of really interesting events that happened. I just find it a real shame that all of this happened off screen, and they weren't given the proper attention that they could have been given, which ultimately just led to a really confusing and frustrating story arc for the majority of Halo fans, as they just simply weren't invested in it. I also found it strange when I was doing my research for this video of just how little happened over the course of the year 2560. It was a whole year of basically nothing. Cortana had had a year of uncontested power, and yet she seemingly gave up after 1 day of Atriox arriving at Zeta Halo with 4 Dreadnoughts. It just didn't make sense. She didn't consider using her Guardians to stop him? I mean, what was that about? I personally would have loved to have seen a huge final battle for control over the ring. But I'd love to hear from you guys what you thought of the created conflict. Would you like to see this era expanded on more? And where do you think the story would take us now after the events of Halo Infinite? Let me know in the comments below, and if there's any more eras of Halo that are equally as unexplained, then who knows, maybe there'll be another video to come. Until then, I've been Intercept, and thank you for joining me in this video.